particular project, was kind of a follow-up of something y'all had already initiated, looking at that HCAPS item of quiet and clean and all of that at night. So here we have lighting and sound in the ICU. Evidence-based recommendations for improving patient outcomes by supporting better quality sleep at Gila Regional Medical Center. I am Angela Cox. I'm a student at West Texas A&M University in Canyon, Texas, and working on my MSN in holistic nursing. So we had some objectives for this project that were established by the actual, just the foundation of the project itself. Integrate nursing and related sciences into the delivery of advanced nursing care to diverse populations. Participate in the design and implementation of new models of care delivery and coordination. Implement evidence-based plans based on trend analysis and practice guidelines. And quality, I can't read sideways. Quantify the impact on quality and safety. And then a couple of more there, directing the project and evaluating outcomes. So what we have thus far is mostly the research, generating the evidence, putting it together in a format that can then go forth, and if changes want to be made, we can look at doing that and going from there. My personal objectives for the project were to identify evidence-based strategies that improve patient outcomes through control of environmental stimuli in intensive care units. Develop a plan for implementing evidence-based recommendations to control intensive care unit environmental stimuli and present to appropriate hospital committees. And finally, evaluate the effects of changes implemented through analysis of subsequent HCAP scores in the hospital environment category and through analysis of changes in average length of ICU stay. So the model of nursing that is a passion of mine is, of course, holistic nursing, Barbara Dossi and her theory of integral nursing. It's a multidimensional theory with healing at the center. And it looks at, the healing, the meta-paradigm of nursing theory, the patterns of knowing, and the 4 quadrants, how we look at and describe anything. But more specifically, the theory itself with these interconnected elements of the nurse, the person, the health, and the environment all coming together to make that core for healing. And so optimal healing environments, we're looking to surround the individual with elements that facilitate the innate healing process, support them so that healing occurs, along with the other things that we're doing. So this is an integral environment, includes both the interior and exterior aspects. The exterior includes objects that can be seen and measured, for example, light and sound. So it fits very nicely within that nursing model. So of course, our HCAP survey question is, during your stay, how often was the area around your room quiet at night? Currently, just through the observation the last 3 months, those sound sources that seem to be the greatest source of stimuli include our door closing systems. You're familiar with the handy catch, and sometimes they work great, sometimes they keep them from slamming, and other times you can't close them without that really loud funk sound. The monitor and the IV pump alarms, the telephone, the telemetry printer, the BiPAP and ventilator hum of those machines and the alarms from those, staff conversations, family conversations, the Pyxis doors. Televisions, sometimes those are an issue, sometimes they're not. The portable x-ray machine with its nice hum as it comes rolling down the hallway, and of course our carts. I noticed at one point our bladder scanner wheels screamed.
It was the loudest thing there, yes. That's funny.
So these are the things that I have identified as our greatest sources of sound in the unit at night. Lighting sources. So as you're very well aware, we've got our lovely bright overhead lights. You can have 1 on, you can have 2 on, but they're bright regardless. it lights up the entire room. We have the option of using flashlights and pin lights. We can leave the patient door open even if their lights are off. Sometimes that illuminates enough to see some basics like adjusting a pump. And then of course we have the nurse's station and hall lighting, which remains on most nights. And then the monitor and IV pump illumination within the room. Now, some things have actually taken place, thanks in part to what you have initiated already. We've had some staffing changes, and I can tell you that that's made a difference in the sound in the evenings.
Yes.
Installation of the sound sensor in the nurse's station area, and I have kind of kept an eye on that and kind of watched to see what triggers it and when it's triggered. And then conscientious attention to that telephone ringer volume. There have been a few nights that it's just ripped me out of wherever I was because it was just so loud, and then somebody will, think to turn the volume down, and oh, okay, that's livable. So then we start looking at the evidence. I did a pretty extensive search through the databases for things specific to light and sound in the intensive care unit, the effects on patients, and strategies that have worked. So I'm just going to go through some of the evidence that I found out there. This particular study noted that sound peaks were found to be the most frequent disruptor of sleep in the ICU patients when studied objectively. They were actually sitting there counting and measuring decibels. The patient feedback, subjective results, indicate that alarms and staff conversations are perceived as the most disruptive. So you've got the actual measured, and then you have the patient perception with that study. Patient sleep quality in the ICU was found to be poor, highly fragmented, and with little slow wave and REM sleep. And of course, a lot of the data tells us that you can't really get the restorative type of healing sleep unless you can get into that REM stage, that third and fourth level of sleep. Patients rated noise and light levels as the greatest factors in sleep disruption in this study by Elliott, Ray, and McKinley. And sound pressure levels were higher than the World Health Organization standards for hospitals. The WHO standards are around 40 decibels at night. And what we're going to see here in a moment is that the average is much higher than that. Stafford, Haverland, and Bridges, the noise from a nebulizer is equivalent to the sound of traffic. An IV infusion pump alarm is equivalent to a vacuum cleaner, and staff conversations can be as loud as a lawnmower at 10 meters.
Wow.
Major noise sources. Conversations, equipment alarms, caregiver activities, telephones, pagers, TVs, closing doors, and falling objects, according to this study. Peak sound level was between 79 and 84.6 decibels, 50% of the time sampled. The WHO states that the maximum should not exceed 40 during the night. So here's our sound activated alarm. Now the interesting thing about this, they have little effect on noise in general, but they do appear to decrease peak sound levels. And what I've noticed, the number one trigger for that sensor is the teleprinter.
Mm-hmm.
Ambient in-room noise was 40 decibels when patient doors were closed. That's about what we're looking for, okay? And then 45 when they were left open. But that did not decrease those peak levels, those sudden noises, the onset of something sharp, something falling, a door slamming, an alarm going off. Those are those peak noises that come through. The study changed the nighttime care routines. This particular study by Xu Yin and others, they actually changed the nighttime care routines to decrease noise and light between 2300 and 0500. They closed the room doors at 2300. The lights were reduced to 40 lux. I guess you get a nifty little lux meter and go around and figure out what that is. The phone volume was set to 40 decibels, and the bedside monitors and alarms to 50 decibels. IV fluids and feedings were replaced at 2300. So they made sure at 2300 that the bags were full. They implemented an alarm response time of 1 minute. X-ray and lab interventions were scheduled before or after the 2300 to the 0500 time frame. Staff conversation volume was lowered very consciously and deliberately after 2300. And the patients perceived that the noise was lower. They perceived that their sleep quality was better. Noise, vital signs, nursing interventions such as bathing and assessments and diagnostic testing were perceived as the greatest sleep disruptors. The greatest sleep disturbing noises were the heart monitor alarm, IV pump alarm, taking vital signs, and the nebulizer. No surprise there. And then the average peak sound and noise level decreased with the implementation of these interventions, where they shifted everything around, shifted the times a little bit, and just made sacred that 6-hour block of time between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. So another study looked at the implementation of a multi-component bundle of interventions, and it again reduced the nighttime noise and light, resulted in fewer staff-patient interactions, fewer awakenings as far as care interventions. It increased sleep efficiency and quality, had a reduction in daytime sleepiness, and reduced delirium when they implemented these bundles. And these studies, they looked at very similar components. They were all really doing about the same thing, just kind of changing the scheduling, conscientiously reducing noise levels, alarm levels. So this particular bundle included noise control component and a light control component and a patient control component, or patient care component.
I got you.
Patient control, yeah. So on the noise control, we had closing of the doors, a night mode for the monitoring equipment, reduced telephone ringer volumes, quiet voices, and earplugs. The light control involved dimming the unit lights and using bedside lighting, as well as offering eye mask. And then as far as patient care, tasks were completed before 2300 or after 0800. Frequent reorientation and pain management, all of those things were dealt with. And by making sure that pain management was addressed, which, you're going to have to do that throughout, but so then I looked at an article that was focused specifically on a clinical practice guideline. They set down a very specific list of guidelines and then looked to see what the effect of that was. So this particular care guideline had two themes: optimize the environment and rest and sleep interventions. As far as optimizing the environment, this is one of my favorites. We've got reporting faulty equipment and fittings and a quiet shoe rule. Very important to have quiet shoes. Environmental cleaning during daylight hours only, quiet conversations, and lighting appropriate for the time of day. And again, no surprises. As far as rest and sleep interventions, manage pain well, optimize the normal circadian rhythm. When it's daylight, the shades are up, the lights are on. And we noticed this up at UNM. They're very conscientious about when it's daytime, lights are on, shades are up. When it's nighttime, lights are down, things are quiet. Of course, they have implemented a daytime rest period with this particular clinical practice guideline. And then they implement things for optimal conditions for nighttime sleep. Again, earplugs, eye shades, alarm settings, and then cluster care hygiene at the appropriate times.
What was the recommended daytime rest period?
An hour to 2 hours. Most of what I saw they implemented was around 2 hours.
Okay.
Yeah. Then there's the nurse's role. So we got all this great data, but it comes down to us and what we're willing to do and what we value. So they looked at a really great article on nurse caring in the ICU and creating healing environments. And my first reaction to that article was, okay, this is nurses are going, okay, it's going to take this, this, and this to create a healing environment. And when I really got into the article, yeah, that was kind of addressed, but they hit on some other things as well that I, kind of hit home to me. Mentoring and nurse-to-nurse caring was notably absent when they started this particular study. Nurses were asked what contributed to a healing ICU environment. Trust, empowerment, and power, and respect were identified, which in turn led to mentoring, collegiality, and camaraderie. So, kind of team building. RNs have to choose to create the healing environments, is what they were able to determine from this particular study. They need a practice environment based on a caring framework philosophy to foster mutual trust and respect. And then nurse-to-nurse caring decreases turnover and burnout, all things that they discovered. And again, that's kind of a really common sense thing, but they went out and got the data and proved what we all know to be true. The nurses actually developed a unit philosophy and standards of practice with proposals for achieving a healing environment. And they were even looking at things like a break room that they had their break room taken away, so they only had the option of standing up to eat. And so they saw that as very demeaning and disrespectful. And when they put together this proposal, we need our own break room. We need our own patient or family waiting area. They had like a joint, in this particular study, they had a joint waiting area, and for some reason that was seen as taking away from the power and the autonomy of this particular unit. And so when they went in and implemented, these proposals that the nurses put forth, it really did a lot for kind of the self-esteem of the unit and the feeling of empowerment and just a cohesiveness, which I found very interesting, that something as simple as a common break room. So, to kind of summarize all of this, most of these studies have repeated themselves, but I took a look at what the study said, what I have observed, and what might be something feasible to tackle. Reduce those nighttime alarm volumes. And one of the things that I've begun doing the last few nights that I've worked is hitting that privacy screen in the room. If I'm in the room, I need to see it, touch the screen, look at what's going on in that monitor. But when I'm ready to leave the room, hit that privacy, and then that patient's not having to listen to that alarm go off, and they're not seeing that, and you've cut down a little bit of that light. So, that's one thing there. Reduce the phone ringer volume, just established at whatever time, let's check that phone ringer volume and make sure we've got it set low enough that it's not going to just blast somebody out of bed. Close the patient room doors, which sometimes you can, sometimes you can't, realistically. But to conscientiously go, would this patient benefit from having their door shut? Replacing those IV fluids and feedings by 2300. And again, that might have to, there might have to be some timing or some planning with that. If the bag's almost full, you're going to have a real hard time convincing somebody they need to change it out, even if it's half full. But something to look at as another means to cut down on that in and out and cut down on the alarms. Conscientiously lowering those staff voices. I'm guilty. I like to visit, talk, we get a new patient in, I'm loud. The West Texas comes through. So, that's something that I'm being very conscious of and catching myself. Hey, Angie, bring it down a notch. And just to have some recognition, buy-in from everybody. And one of the studies said that they had created a signal for each other that was kind of just a subtle, just a tug on the ear was their signal to one another. Hey, let's bring it down a little bit. And then, of course, I really like this last one. We give them toothbrush, toothpaste. Why not give them some earplugs and an eye mask as part of that little welcome kit? That to me is one of the easiest things to implement. And as long as their agitation level is, I think it said if they're a -4 or above, that they're a candidate for the earplugs and the eye mask. Reducing the ambient lighting, consider installation of low-lux bedside lighting. I know that's something that y'all have kind of toyed with. Again, it's a logistics and cost thing. Maybe the LED lights. If there's, maybe a clip-on LED light that could be mounted to the IV pole. They've got those little touch lights now. That might be a possibility we could look at that probably wouldn't involve a great amount of expense. But might be, or if it's over the sink and it was just a lower level LED. Set the, again, what I mentioned, setting the in-room monitors to privacy. Consider updating our door closing mechanisms. I don't know what kind of cost that would involve, but just that spring action. If we could figure out some way, I think some of them are just worn out. Especially room 6. It's a bear. Consider changing the timing of flexible patient care activities. If a patient needs incontinent care at 3 a.m., that's a great time to bathe them. Obviously, we know that. If not, do we really have to wake them up to give them a bath before 6? Something to consider. Is this really in their best interest, or would there be another time of day that would be better for them? And again, not trying to shirk nighttime duties, but what really is best for patients. Vented patients, most of the time, they're sedated, and that's a great time. Let's take care of that, and let's get that taken care of so they're clean and fresh and germs knocked back. But for several of our patients, maybe the additional sleep time would be best, especially since there's some of them that never go to sleep until 4 a.m. So, that's going to take a little bit of buy-in from everybody to look at, and I felt like that's what they were doing at UNM. I felt like there was kind of an understanding between team members that we're going to bathe them when we can, when it's necessary. It may be my shift, it may be your shift. If I get it done, great. If not, hey, maybe there will be a better opportunity. But just kind of to look at some of those patient care activities. And then this is one that I bring in from the outside because, I've noticed here that our pharmacy schedule is a very rigid, okay, they got their first dose at this time, then their second dose, even if it's a PO med, is going to be at 2 a.m. And my previous experience was one of, they may have gotten their first dose at this time, but then we're going to try to work them into a very standardized schedule of 2100. If it has to be Q6, then obviously it's 612, 612. If it's a TID, we've got set times for the TIDs, but they don't typically fall. Certain meds are not going to be administered at 2 a.m. And what I'm finding here is, because that's X number of hours after the last time they had it. So, if there's a possibility of looking at that, I think that too could improve our patient rest and perception of quiet. Consider implementation of wireless headphones for patient TV viewing. My sweet gentleman this weekend, deaf as a doorpost, TV blaring loudly, and you can hear it with the door shut. We had the teenager, kept that TV on all night long. We had our little kid, our little boy, watching SpongeBob, and so you've got, and you can't always close those doors. His room was not a room that we wanted the door closed, but what if we could do some wireless headphones, cordless headphones, where they could listen, enjoy the TV, but it not be out here. Just something to throw out there and consider. And then investigate options for improving nurse-to-nurse caring and empowerment for creating healing environments. And I don't know what the answer to that one is. Maybe that's the next project. Develop a unit philosophy and standard of practice that is nurse-driven. And of course, a few of the articles. These are the articles that are referenced in this particular presentation, but I have a list of I actually have the PDFs of probably 40 that are related to ICU and different factors related to healing environments in the ICU.
That was very nice.
So, questions? Anything I can?
I guess what were the biggest obstacles in implementing a lot of this stuff? Was it so much the nurse buy-in, or was it the cost?
You know, so many of the things that they were doing didn't cost anything. It was just a conscious effort. And I think it probably was nurse buy-in, but I think it's all in that approach. You know, when you approach it from a standpoint of, here's the situation, what do y'all, this is the information that's out there, what do y'all think would work for us? What are you willing to do because we all know we want to do what's best for the patients. So, you know, I think that's how they got a lot of that buy-in. Was they first thing they did in a lot of these cases was they did a qualitative study and said, what are you seeing? What are you feeling? What are your perceptions here? They did that with the staff. They also did it with the patients. You know, a lot of the qualitative of what is your experience of sleep in the ICU. And so, yeah, I think basically it's a matter of you know, what does the staff think? You know, we know what the evidence says.
Mm-hmm.
What are their perceptions? Because they all know. Every one of them, you can go down the line and ask them, what do you think is the biggest source of noise or light? What do you think would make it easier for patients to sleep at night? And most of the time they'll come up with it themselves.
What was the biggest noise stimuli?
Patient perception or actual?
Both.
Patient perception, it was conversations. Actual measured, I think that was back on that.
Right, I think
on those first.
the alarms.
Sound peaks. So a door slamming, somebody dropping something, the alarm going off. You know, they can handle it. It indicated that patients can handle that steady noise. And one that I didn't include in this presentation even talked about using white noise in their rooms and how beneficial, you know, that white noise actually helped to drown out some of the hum of everything else. Even though it was louder, it actually, they slept better because it kind of muted everything else, and it helped with some of those peaks, but it still doesn't solve the peaks, you know. And it's just like that, the sensor, you know, the sensor doesn't do anything for the constant, but the sensor did seem to have an effect on those peaks. So when Clay comes in and he's wound higher than a kite and the sensor's going yellow, yellow, yellow. Clay. So yeah, that's the thing. And if HCAHPS, you know, we've got to decide what's our driving factor. Obviously HCAHPS has to be, because that's where the money is. And so, you know, maybe it's as simple as training each other, teaching each other, or modeling for each other, telling the patients what we're doing to keep things quiet. You know, that's a big deal with HCAHPS, is planting that seed. It's just like I was telling you about the gentleman that I was telling him about his medications.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're going to get a survey, and this is what they're going to ask, and here's what I'm doing, and this is why. You know, planting the word always. That's a big thing, you know, planting the word always in their mind. We always want to provide you the best care. We always want to make sure that things are quiet around your room at night so that you can get rest. Because we want that. And I know people think it's hokey, but it works.
Right.
That's why they keep throwing it at us, because it works. Because people are like trained Pavlov's dogs. If they are conditioned enough, they bite the bait.
What about putting up signs? I mean, letting people know this is what we're going to be doing, you know, from this time to this time for our sleep, for our rest periods during the day, and this is what time nighttime.
You know, I didn't see specific details on that, but my personal opinion is that if they're strategically placed and graphically appropriate, they'll work. What we got up there right now, nobody sees it, nobody notices it. It took me a month before I realized there was a quiet sign on every patient door. Maybe that's just me, but they're so subtle and they're so out of everybody's way
Right.
that nobody sees it. So yeah, I think signs that let everybody know.
In Lubbock, sorry. to
Yeah.
interrupt you. So in Lubbock, they would dim the lights from 1 to 3. And they also, like on the mom and baby floors, they would have, like they had like standing sign that was like in the hallway. I mean, I know that's not always like,
Right,
you
right.
can move the sign up, get a bed in, but you know, put it back. But they would dim the lights for 2 hours.
I think that the signs on the doors that say limit visitors to 2, I think that's been effective. Because I think we've had some families who have been, it's the same old thing. Some are gonna follow the rules and some are gonna go, I don't care about you. And some, quite frankly, can't read. So,
Yes.
you know, that's something I think we forget, is that we have a tremendous literacy problem. And when it comes to health literacy and any kind of health jargon, it's even worse. So, but yeah, I think signs are a great idea. I think, I don't know how many people visit the Gila Regional website. It would be interesting to get some data from that and, you know, put some information out there.
And we also have a Facebook. I mean, I don't have Facebook, but I know that Gila Regional does have a Facebook, and they put information out there as well.
And occasionally, I think I actually have liked that. Don't see anything very often.
I don't think it gets used to.
Is that a Dakota thing?
I don't know.
Is he the PR guy on that? I know he's just really getting rolling in his new job, but that would definitely be something to look at too. A visitor information sheet, you know. But again, thinking literacy, very specific, very professional, but yet very polite. You know, how do you get the point across with little words, you know, but still be polite and effective in your message. But I think they're all things to consider.
I think the signs at the door, you know, slowly introducing this in the elevators, and then as soon as you get the floor, a bigger sign.
Absolutely.
Like you said,
You
I
can
like
blow
that.
up that picture of those little kids that are kind of creepy that are like, shh, it's quiet time.
So yeah.
One of those scary movies.
Is there anything more that you would like me to pursue with this? Do we have any HCAPS information? Is there,
We do for the floor. There's very little for us.
Specifically.
Right.
which is probably a good thing, because if we're not getting mentioned specifically,
The most recent one that we were mentioned was patient care. That was, I mean, it was good patient care, so that was a good thing.
good.
Since I've been here, I think we've had one that was a loud noise disturbance at night, and
Okay.
we know what that was from.
Yeah.
So,
We do.
but I think just the biggest obstacles to, I think that's one thing that needs to be identified is patient buy-in, is it cost? I mean, most of these changes can be done pretty cheap. The doors, like you said, the lights at night, of course, adjusting your lights. I mean, there's a little bit of cost involved, but it's not like you're having to redo the whole department. So those are things that I talked to maintenance about, because we'll be adjusting our lights too as well. So let's see, what was the big thing? The signs, which will have to get marketing involved, which will be some cost, but I mean, that's our department, but to them. And then hopefully we will be the pilot, and then we can introduce system insert. So
I like the earplug idea.
the
Like a
airplane.
little, just like a little paper eye mask. I wear an eye mask when I sleep. So.
Do you really?
It's really effective.
I've used earplugs because I worked at night for so long, and a lot of times when the kids were there, and of course you can't tell kids to be quiet all the time, you know, and especially
Right.
I've got 6. So, but then I would find it that I would wake up because it was too quiet, and I needed to hear the kids. So after a while, it's like, you know, I needed to hear the kids in order to sleep. So
You know, and there again, it may be yes, we want what's best for patients. Absolutely, we want to create a healing environment. But when we're honest, we're talking HCAPs. So when we hand them a pair of earplugs and we say, it's very important to us that your room is always quiet at night. We can't control everything, but we want to provide these for you so that if you feel like it's more than you can rest with, you can use these. You know, again, just
Lay it on
holding.
them thick.
Yeah. And you can stop recording at any